Okay, so welcome to my presentation about scientific revolution and enlightenment. And first, I just want to say what scientific revolution is. And it was basically the emergence of modern science during the early modern period, um, when mathematics, physics, astronomy, biology, and chemistry transformed views of society and nature. Um, Basically, that sciences, like math department scientists, transformed the society and nature and the way people thought about them. Um, and I just want to say that scientific revolution uh, was actually crucial to enlightenment, because enlightenment would not be possible without the scientific revolution, and that just needs to be clear because one drove from another. Um, okay. So the causes of the scientific revolution for education. Throughout the 14th century, philosophy emerged as a separate discipline of study in the universities, um, along with natural philosophy emerged as a department inside this department, basically studying math, physics, astronomy, biology, all the sciences that were never studied before. And people actually had access to study them. Some people, not all, but they still had it. Renaissance was pretty big also due to that. It had this idea of humanism to it, and it basically pushed the people to think on their own, apart from the society, and brought in ancient mathematics from the thinkers from the past, navigation, um, and like science. I mean, the things that came out of it was pretty important because people actually needed tools to navigate, such as telescopes, binoculars, and stuff like that. They also kind of needed to know how to read stars. So, because of navigation, basically people created multiple instruments as well as dived into the area of astronomy even more and more. Astronomy, Copernicus, Nicholas Copernicus, actually right there with this silly face. He was the one to introduce heliocentric view of the universe for the first time, stating that the sun was actually in the middle of the universe, against there being as the center of the universe, thus going against tradition and what the church has always said. Um, the work of Copernicus served as the foundation for the works of later scientists and philosophers such as Galileo and all the others who studied sort of physics and astronomy and math in some aspect. Another aspect was that secularism didn't quite emerge, but there was a decline to religion, and people did not trust religion in Catholicism as much because of all the stuff they've done. Protestant Reformation was emerging, so it's just this idea of religion declining. So now I just want to dive into the people who actually made the scientific revolution happen, besides Copernicus, because without them, scientific revolution would not possibly happen, because they were the ones to make the crucial discoveries. So first one was Galileo, who was known for his telescope that proved Copernicus. Galileo was not allowed to publish his book proving the thing because it was prohibited by Catholic Church, so it was only published after his death. He also developed the laws, and proved them, the laws of motion, using a newly developed experimental method where he basically experimented on things. Bacon, on the other side, Francis Bacon, on the other side, created the inductive method, which basically said observe, make a hypothesis, and then experiment. Descartes, he was a pretty interesting character. He published his discourse on method and introduced deductive reasoning in order to prove the existence of humans. Yeah, that's the idea that actually drove him to prove the existence of humans. He also connected his ideas of algebra and geometry, coming up with Cartesian dualism. We actually had theorem Descartes in my geometry class back at home. It's really interesting, I guess. So he's still impacting the society in a way. Now, Isaac Newton. Newton published Principia in 1687. Is considered one of the greatest works of the scientific revolution, where he described natural laws of motion and gravity using math. He argued actually that cause participation wasn't necessary due to that natural laws were actually constant. He was the one with entropy and gravity and all this stuff. Along with those four, other scientists such as Vesalius studied anatomy and physiology of a human body. And like people were actually like diving into like anatomy and biology, cutting humans, cutting animals, and learning, taking notes, taking pictures. That later led to the emergence of medicine. In response to those people, countries organized scientific societies, which basically brought together scientists and argued about that, basically work together to create new things and get discoveries. So now, the transformation to Enlightenment. So scientific revolution led directly to Enlightenment because it encouraged people to use science as an answer to everything. Its ideas serve as the foundation to those created during the Enlightenment era. Time period, the scientific society changed during the scientific revolution because the new theories were being developed and then questioned people to think outside of their realm. So people were coming up with new stuff. So now, what is actually the Enlightenment description? It was a period of time in Western history, and philosophy, and cultural life, in which reason was advocated as the primary source and legitimacy for authority. So there's the concept of primary reason, which I'll talk a bit about later. The objectives of the scientific revolution was basically to understand the natural world and our place in it, solely based on reason and the study of natural laws, without actually turning to religion, because they were sort of skeptical to it. Now the connection to the scientific revolution was that the Enlightenment was directly came from the scientific revolution. The Enlightenment was a program to reform economic and social aspects of European life based on scientific method established during the scientific revolution. It basically implies that all the discoveries were based, and the understanding of politics, economics, and social stuff was based on discoveries and knowledge of the scientific revolution. The difference between the two was that scientific revolution focused on the physical world and how men related to it, while Enlightenment concentrated on how the society worked and how we sort of related to one another. So now to the major concepts. Progress and freedom. So progress was seen as key for the Enlightenment because only through progress we can achieve new things, while freedom served as backbone to it, due that freedom of ideas and toleration of ideas was very important, because if ideas were not tolerated, they could not be published, thus the public could not learn them. So then everything was sort of connected by natural laws, and it was argued that everything could be explained by natural laws, and all the works of the people, I'll talk about later, mentioned sort of natural laws in some way. Primary of reason was crucial for progress because people actually had to use reason in order to think. So yeah, and then people thought that there's explanation for everything. There were no miracles anymore. People came up with this skepticism to tradition and sort of deism, which basically stated that God created the world, set it running, and it's just running using having its natural laws. Now to the impacts, in particular political impacts. So now John Locke published his two treatises of civil government in 1690, where he described the state of nature of the human, where humans were basically perfect, minus that they lack security. He also introduced the ideas of natural rights, aka life, liberty, property. He wrote some essays concerning human understanding, where he stressed in the importance of development and education. That was basically him. After him, this group of called philosophers emerged, and basically that group was connected by that they were all committed to fundamental reform in society. They believed in progress through discovering natural laws, and one of the major person in this group was Voltaire, who wrote a lot about the society and how it is organized. He argued for religious toleration, said this the majority of people are condensed in their own minds, sort of introduced patriotism in his philosophical dictionary. He was very influential. Then came Montesquieu, basically argued for constitutional monarchy, published his Spirit of Laws in 1698, I think. Introduced the checks and balances, saying that no one branch of power is legislative, executive, judiciary should be greater than the other. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, on the other hand, established the social contracts, and I guess like education. Social contract was basically that people kind of sacrificed some of their liberties, national rights, especially liberties, to the government in order to get protection, and if the governments did not protect their natural rights, and then they had the right to rebel. So now, and that idea then inspired the American Revolution and the French Revolution. Economic action. So one big guy, Adam Smith, introduced capitalism and laissez-faire, which basically stated that the markets should be free, should be fair competition, no government interference. The government should just be there to secure the markets, secure the capital, like secure the actual flow. He argued that economies can work basically on their own. Some guys like Conseil argued for an agrarian reform in France. Industrial Revolution definitely emerged out of this whole thing, but it was more economic than political or social. However, it was sort of social also. Self-interest became this big thing, basically how people in the past cared about surviving in society, like developing one another. Now people cared more about basically how to get more money, how to become richer, how to live a better life, and be happy. So social impact. Basically, Europe was on the way to become like what it is now, and it was on the way to the thinking we have now. Liberty was basically there. That liberty was created for individuals, while law was created for society, but liberty was still above law, and people during the French Revolution actually thought about that liberty was above law, and they were right. Let me see. Religious toleration was extending, especially in Protestant countries, due to the emergence of these new branches of religion. Again, pumped the idea that old ideas should be free and tolerant. We saw secularism emerge for the first time, basically saying that church does not play that big of a role as it has been before. It's still crucial. The interesting thing is that the actual philosophers during the Enlightenment argued that church was pretty important because they referred to God in every single one of their works, not even thinking of secularism. It emerged as a result of Enlightenment and the scientific revolution. And finally, it's basically this new way of thinking in the society, starting during the scientific revolution and later emerging Enlightenment and later on, of like creating new stuff, thinking in their own, like using reason and stuff. And yes, scientific Enlightenment came from scientific revolution. It was based on scientific revolution, and without it, it would not have been possible. And the life we have now would not have been possible without the Enlightenment. So, yes, that's it. I hope it was okay. It's a bit too long, but thank you, Mr. Adam, for seeing this.